Oh, yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the story behind the story. Welcome to the machine. The gears are being exposed. The gears that drive our matrix are being exposed. Oh, yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. It's, we're live tonight. We were live last week after taking a kind of a forced sabbatical. I appreciate and thank you for your emails and your concerns. And again, it's just, you have to laugh, because if you don't laugh, you have to cry. I tell you, some strange things have been happening to my computers, my cell phones. I mean, a whole new level of weird has been happening. And of course, when you call Apple, I'm pretty much predominantly Apple, and they tell you to go to the Apple store and get a geek and a tech to look at things. And when I do, they say, well, this is very strange. We've never seen this happen. Could it possibly be that there is some high-level surveillance going on? Again, you're not paranoid if they really are out to survey you, to get surveillance on you. So, it is what it is, folks. We just keep going on and keep telling the truth. I am your host, Dr. A. Truott. Yes, that is my name. I am not making it up. I've been accused of that's my num deplore or an alias. No, it's on my birth certificate, which is there. Folks, last week we had quite an interesting show. Those of you that commented on it knew. Yeah, we had Major Burdock with us, and Philip Fairbanks was on the left coast, the west coast, and we were talking live with Kevin Burdock. He was there on Capitol Hill, actually looking over the swampland, the drained swamp, if you want to call it that. It was drained a couple hundred years ago. Well, to me, it's still a swamp. It still reeks. I've been there. I couldn't wait to get out, frankly. It was not a good feeling there. And so we wanted to have Mr. James Fairbanks join us. Mr. Fairbanks has been the kind of really under the hot seat with his 8chan network. Oh my goodness! I'd like to just have him tell you the story. He was kind of worn out last week and had to take a nap and get caught up on his sleep. So, but he's with us now live. I hear you. I think
jumping in.
Yeah, I'm here.
Insurance, Jim Watkins.
Jim Watkins. I'm sorry, Philip.
It's quite all right.
Oh man,
Major Burdock's awful cool. I'd be like him.
Hey, I apologize. I know better than that, Mr. Watkins.
I'm a big fan. I totally passed out last week waiting to stay up all night to listen to you, and I'm sorry about that. It was a super stressful week for me.
Well, I can't imagine why it would be stressful for you. I really can't. Let's give our listeners a synopsis of what happened to you the last 2 weeks, if we could. Okay, you were a guest on the story behind the story, and this was the Friday night before the El Paso shooting. The Hispanics were killed there in El Paso.
And I'm sorry if you were blamed for that.
No, hey,
I didn't do either, but they blamed me.
Yeah, they blamed everybody. I mean, it's like I told my attorney, James, to blame the story behind the story and to blame 8chan and James Watkins is like blaming a pastor and a Assembly of God church for the sin that goes on in the world. I mean, we expose it.
Not our fault. Not our fault. And we weren't even talking about stuff like that. We were talking about like Jollibee in Canada and things like that.
Yeah, I mean,
very, very innocent conversation, I thought.
Yes, it was.
There were no four-letter words. Nothing on the George Carlin list was said. I mean, we were civil.
Yeah, you were good boys. I listened up to a lot of the show. I couldn't listen to the whole thing, but a good 45 minutes gave me a pretty good idea. It was okay. No problems. It was just, it's a talk radio show, for heaven's sakes. I mean, I
enjoy talking too, But
okay, so tell us what happened. You come back. You're broadcasting from the Philippines, correct? The Manila and the Philippines.
Yeah, we were. I was talking from my office.
And so, what happened the following Monday? It's kind of I get a cryptic note from Kevin, aka Major, and saying we're going to be off the radio until further notice. And here's a little bit. I can't tell you much more than that.
Well,
wow, what happened?
Well, what happened? Sorry, I got a little time delay there.
Go ahead. Explain what happened on Monday.
On Twitter, they sent me a Twitter subpoena, and I guess I'm the first one in history to receive a congressional subpoena by Twitter. And it didn't even go to my Twitter because my Twitter was turned off 2 years ago by Twitter. So I received it. I received it by way of other people on Twitter. So it was. My whole family's been.
Oh dear, we're losing the feed. Unfortunately, can't hear you too well, James.
I don't know if anything will be released or not from that, but I talked to them for 4 questions, and basically they were asking if I was a spy or not, and if I worked for Russia or Iran or Venezuela, Syria, countries like that. And they had a really sincere, I was surprised when I got there. I thought it was just going to be pure harassment, but it wasn't. It wasn't. The congressmen actually have no clue what has been going on on the internet. I think at least in the House of Representatives, in the Senate, they've got some smart guys that seem to understand the deal, like the Ted Cruz from Texas, for example. He's really got a handle on it, but he's a senator. But the House doesn't really have a handle on it, and they've been getting all their information from these billionaires that are kind of manipulating everybody anyway. It's like, this is like asking the devil if it's a good idea to do something bad. So,
well, to the devil.
I explained to them that that's not what we do, and they were very concerned about some of the things, and I guess they've made a club for the billionaire guys in Silicon Valley, have a club now, for a tech club for stopping terrorism, and it basically is a prior restraint type thing. It's totally un-American, but it fits in with the majority of their users who are not American.
Interesting.
So I explained how this all works to them, and how we don't run algorithms on what people say. We don't censor people. And of course, if something violent is talked about, this is reported and taken care of, and that's the law. Hate speech is actually constitutionally protected, and I know it sounds awful, but the justices in the Supreme Courts have come up several times, and they say that the cure for hate speech is more speech in rebuttal.
Great point. That's exactly right.
That's what's supposed to happen. So,
and I would submit, James, that people that have, let's for want of a better word, a screw loose upstairs, whether they're on antidepressants or any other type of of medication. Sometimes all they need is a place to vent, a place to just lay it out and just, okay, there I am, and go on about their business. I don't think posting a missive or a statement is necessarily, the grounds for them to go and do what they do. I really think it's much deeper than that.
Well, it is, and if they look into it, there's actually been more shootings since we've been offline than when we were online. And a lot of this is because it does give people a place to vent. And as long as they're not being specific about what they're going to do and where they're going to do it, they have not broken the law.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, the Washington Post, the Washington Post and other stories that followed up with that was quite amazing. And, painting a picture with broad strokes. Because I was contacted to make a statement. I refused to. I didn't say. I said no because Alex Studer, bless his heart, who's no longer with us, was constantly having to defend himself for accusations of child pornography, kiddie porn, him being a sexual predator because he lived in a kind of a broken down RV, motorhome. I myself had been attacked many times by people who says, well, he's this, he's that, oh my goodness, he's into, very nasty things. Let's just put it that way. So I wasn't surprised at all when I was heard the accusations. They're in print that to me, that are libelous, that you were, prime suspect of being a child pornography dealer and purveyor.
I thought it was pretty upsetting as well. It's quite obvious we're not that. This is just basically people attacking us, and they have agencies that are paid to do this. Believe it or not, there are groups online that are paid to attack. Take them offline this way, and it's kind of I think it's called swatting, and we were thoroughly swatted, but we're coming back up. We're the itsy bitsy spider climbing up the water spout, and our final pieces of equipment arrived today, and we're setting those up, and we're going to have our own system for DDoS protection and be able to go back online rapidly.
Oh, that's good news. That's good news.
And I've been working on a cover too.
Good. It's not. It's
cover since El Paso. Put that on.
Okay. Wow. Do we have? Is Kevin with us? Is Kevin Major? Are you with us? I saw you were standing by, but I don't know if you had your mic muted. I know.
True. I'm so glad you have a chance. Back on. Let me do a sound check.
Yeah, it's been a little spiky on our end.
Let me sound. I'll get back to you.
Okay. Well, yeah, it sounds okay when you're coming through, but it's whatever it's called, the overfeed, and we had that a good little bit too with James. Philip, how are you coming through? The time delay. We'll just continue. Philip, are you with us?
Sorry about that. I was muted there. Yeah.
I have another internet connection. I'll try that for you.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm here. I'm just right now on the second cup of coffee because the first one just didn't do the job. Still a little jet lagged and sleep deprived from the 14-hour time difference.
Well, so you're back in the saddle in Manila. Is that correct?
Oh, finally back home again. Yeah. Seattle was fun until it wasn't fun anymore. It was like the last 4 days. I was there like 4 extra days. Everything went wrong. Literally everything that could go wrong went wrong.
Wow. Well, Seattle's being such a liberal hot spot anymore. I kind of just close my eyes as I go through it and get back to Eastern Washington.
Hey, at least it's not Oregon. At least it's not Portland. I'll give it that. All day long. I'll take Seattle all day over Portland. Seattle compared to no contest there.
Well, okay. So, yeah, what's now you're getting back in? I'm glad to hear that HN's coming back online, and to be shut down that way without due process, without really having the story behind the story exposed is quite troubling. No matter if it's there in Manila or anywhere in the world, it's wow.
Well, HN never ran from Manila. It's always run from the United States. It was not a Manila project. It's always been right in San Francisco, California. So,
okay.
Which maybe surprises people, and the news has been all over the place. And of course, cleaning up libel is impossible. So I'm just ignoring it mostly. As far as it goes, though, we are not taken offline by the government. The government has no problem with me. I talked to them. I explained things and told them honestly, to the best of my recollection, every single question they asked me. And they have no problem with us. Who has a problem with us? The large companies that are now controlling the internet, where they've been taken over the things that the government used to do on the internet. The government used to run the DNS servers and all of this stuff, and now it's all privatized. And these larger private and public companies are the ones that have taken us offline. So I'm working with a bunch of smaller companies, many smaller companies, and we'll be coming back online and going around those people, sort of like building our own little internet again. And it's been a little expensive, but you know what? They irritated me, so I'm spending some money now.
Is it big? Is it mainstream media that's really doing this? Are they tied to the big media moguls, James?
Well, I can explain this. It's these larger companies. I hate to name names, but you guys know who they are. The ones that have 2 billion users.
Okay.
If they have the ones that have 2 billion users are having to satisfy the majority of their users' governments. Because, of course, America doesn't have 2 billion users. If you count Canada and the United States, what do you got? Maybe 400 million people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that leaves you like 1.6 billion people in other countries that they get most of their income from. They get most of their income from Asia and Europe because that's the majority of their users. So they have to follow EU law, and they have to, Canada's very free. America's very free. We have even the Philippines is very free. They have very good freedom of speech laws, although we don't run our site from the Philippines. But the laws are free there. The other countries are the ones that they have to satisfy to get paid. So if the People's Republic of China is not happy with them, or if the EU is not happy with them, they have to kowtow to them, not to the American people. So we're trying to run our company American style, American values, and that's what we're doing. So I'm back in America, and I'm setting it up properly, and we'll go back online as soon as these last few pieces of equipment that we've ordered around the world have been put in place, and we will be live and almost impossible to take down.
Well, that's good news. Good for you, James. And let me tell you, I don't know if you obviously didn't hear this show live last week, but let me just tell you what happened from my perspective. Again, I wasn't even in Utah. I was out of the area that week, but I had a very close friend who is a longtime listener to the show. He called me concerned about what was said at this so-called Freedom Forum, which was held the Wednesday before the show aired on Friday. The Wednesday, the keynote speaker of this Congressman Chris Stewart, who sits on the House Intelligence Committee, by the way. Chris Stewart had Susan Gordon, who's, of course, the second in command of Director of National Intelligence. She got up and she flat out made some interesting remarks that he thought was targeting me and this radio show, because she said basically it's time for the government and whoever that is, she didn't really say the government. She says our group, basically, which could be, like you said, private companies now, military industrialist complex. Who knows what that is? But they said there's so much cyber disinformation going over the radio. She says the internet, blog talk stations, and blogs themselves, that people, quote, she said, quote, are being so confused they don't know what is true anymore. And we've got to stop this. Well, to me, that's double speech for saying we got to stop people from telling the truth and exposing the CIA, the Mossad, the secret machinations behind the curtain. Okay? Well, she then went on to say that hate speech can never be protected under First Amendment freedom of speech. And you just barely said it, your first statement. Hate speech is protected. We may not agree with what's being said, and we scratch our head, but it was very clear. The Supreme Court said the best antidote for hate speech is rebuttal speech that makes more sense and defuses it. I may not disagree with what
actually
James
even like in 1969, Judge Brandeis said only an emergency can justify repression, and fear of serious injury cannot alone justify suppression of free speech.
Yes. So the timing of this is what I'm getting at. The timing of this is quite amazing. She actually went on and said that she would be meeting the next day, Thursday, with some people in the NSA. They're in the data collection center, this great big, huge, monolithic monstrosity there in Utah, the NSA data collection center. And she would be basically taking steps to stop this. And then she made the comment, and this is a direct quote. I wasn't there, so this is hearsay. She said some of the worst perpetrators are locally here in Utah and have been doing this for well over 2 decades. Well, hello. Was she talking about Glenn Beck? I don't think so. Glenn Beck hasn't been doing it nearly as long as I've been doing it. And I got to go back to one broadcast. This is about 10, 15 years ago, just right after 2001, after the September 11th. I had a Patriots group in Montana, this Freemen's group, contact me saying, are you really True Ott? Is that your real name? I says, well, yes, it's not a stage name. It's not a nom de plural. It's my given name. Why? He says, wow, we were confused because we have right here the red list, government CIA red list. And they're telling me these are the top of the line subversives that the CIA has identified as being problematic and to be removed. Red list. What? Yeah. And number 2 on the list was True Ott. Well, they were reporting on this. I said, well, I'm really, really upset at that, gentlemen. I really am. And they said, well, yeah, you should be concerned. I said, no, I'm upset because I don't want to be number 2 in anything. If I want to be on that list, I want to be number 1. What do I have to do to be number 1? And they laughed, got a kick out of that. But
who's number 1?
They didn't say. I didn't go in, but they just said the list was there. But I think I knew who's number 1 on the list, and he's no longer with us. He was taken out. But so here's the point. If this was a concerted attack, I think it's possible that, again, I know I've done show after show after show about these sleeper agents, these so-called Manchurian candidates. They're all the same. They have multiple personality disorder, MPDs. They're under medication, many times under what's called SSRI inhibitors, antidepressants, Prozac, et cetera, to make them function. They're bipolar. They've been literally classified as multiple personality disorder going back from early childhood, which means in simplistic talk under MK Ultra, they have been ritually abused and fragmented in their psyche. So they are, and there's an army of this. If you believe Russ Disdar's work, and I believe he's very valid, that there is a satanic super soldier army that can do these things. So, okay, dial him up. Here's a guy, and leak the story to the Washington Post. He's listening to the story behind the story on Friday night. They get off the air, and he posts this ultimatum document to 8chan, goes down the next morning and shoots up a Walmart. It sounds, wow. It sounds just too...
Yeah, you know about that though, right? The crazy guy is dead. He's a New Age therapist.
Yeah, we've got a real bad feedback. Philip, that's... Oh, yeah. Yeah, it sounds... you sound like Darth Vader with the bad head cold. Yeah, sorry, but we have to... you just have to reattach somehow, Philip. I'm assuming that's Philip is doing that. It's hard to tell. But you're right. His dad is a New Age psychiatrist, a psychologist. Just happens to be part of the government system and that. So, yeah, what do you think of that?
I'm so sorry for that family, though, because I have heard that the mother tried to get the boy's guns taken away and knew that he was a problem, and she talked to the sheriff, I believe. And the sheriff couldn't do anything because it wasn't breaking the law, which comes down to the prior restraint doctrine is valid in more than just the First Amendment. If you haven't broke the law and you own a gun, then you haven't broke the law until you actually use it in a crime. But when you do commit a crime, violent conduct should be swiftly punished.
And I've said this on the radio, this radio show many, many times, James. The single common denominator with all of our supposed shooters or suspected shooters, the single common denominator is not that they had an automatic weapon. No, they are on medications. They are on specific mind-altering drugs, and the media is not focusing on that for some reason. So, well, it's not the drug.
There's a lot of money in drugs.
Yes, and of course, that's again the power brokers that are really behind the scenes. Big pharmaceutical, big pharma, big oil, big bankers. It's the same group of people. Let's be honest.
I've heard that the Alphabet company also owns 2 pharmaceutical companies.
Yes. Yeah. And so my attorney, when I was, she's been a great counselor for many years for me. And when she saw the attacks that were posted on me and are offshore, actually, hosted out of Ireland, so I can't, bring any action there and so forth. She was saying, wow, it does appear like you have a lot of hate or anxiety, as she said, towards a certain group of people. I said, look, Celeste, look behind. When you uncover a rock and another rock, and this slimy, creepy crawler thing is always present, you start to have a problem with them. Okay, and I said, if you want to see it, here's exactly the way it looks. Okay, and she just scratched her head and said, well, okay, you got to be very careful though how you talk about it. I get that. And again, it's about programming the masses to believe one way. And this is why Susan Gordon was so upset, because, hey, if enough people start believing, there may be the 100th monkey theory, where at what point do people start to wake up? I've said this for 20 plus years. Look, I'm not a violent person. I'm very pacifist. I'm very peace-loving. I really am. But, I have a brain and I have a voice. And if I have an opinion, I should be able to, first of all, make sure that I'm right, make sure that the opinion is correct and valid, not some strange, far-out, wacky thing, and then press forward. On my office wall, I have Abraham Lincoln's most famous quote, in my opinion. He says, I don't care what other people say about me, because I just make sure that I am right, and I press forward in faith. I mean, that's all you can do.
That's a great credo.
Yeah.
Do the right thing. But even if you say the wrong thing, you haven't broke the law. That's an important distinction. You could have a totally wacky, outrageous opinion on something, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that you and I have a lot in common. I've enjoyed your show for years, and when my friends started getting involved with it too, I said, "Wow, great! This is fantastic!" I couldn't have been happier. But having a valid opinion is not necessary, and censoring yourself, if you have to think it through so thoroughly before you say it, you're basically self-censoring. And self-censoring is what these large companies are trying to get people to do. So they will worry and fear if they have a YouTube channel, if they're going to be demonetized. Demonetized sounds practically like demonized to me. If they have worry about that, then those people will self-censor themselves, and this is basically prior restraint in action psychologically. And you're right about the drugs and the drug companies and these poor unfortunate souls. They need help. I drove across America on my way to Washington, D.C. I didn't fly, and I took my time, and I went through a lot of states, and I talked to people, and the medical professionals are realizing in the 70s the insane people were securely taken care of in state hospitals. And in the 80s, they let them go. And we have an entire generation of insanity on the streets that is maybe controlled through medication. But what if they miss a bill? What if they miss their shot or however they're taking their medication?
Yeah.
They can fly off the handle at the... So this is really the real problem. We don't need more gun laws. We need to check in with the medical community and see what they can do to help these people that have insanity problems, like this paranoid schizophrenic that you're talking about. Maybe that's not the right word anymore, but I'm not a medical professional. But I think that's probably what it's called. The people that have multiple personalities and stuff, they used to be locked up.
Yeah,
especially the violent ones.
I did a series of actual public presentations on the reality, as I saw it, of the Mormon Church founder Joseph Smith. And this is funny that Susan Gordon is actually speaking and doing her comments in the Joseph Smith Memorial Building. Now, the reality, folks, is whenever you have, and when you're from in between ages 8 and like 10 years old, the synopsis of the brain hasn't quite yet connected. And so you're ripe for becoming a multiple personality disorder, MPD, or that type of individual if you have extreme trauma during that formative time. And Joseph Smith Jr.
developed.
Yeah, Joseph Smith Jr. had extreme trauma during that formative year. It's the Mormon Church has on the Joseph Smith building. They have a film about his early youth, and indeed they show this. He had typhus fever, which went into the bone, the periosteum bone of the shin, which is the most nerve-rich area in a young lad's growing body. And he had multiple surgeries without anesthetic, experimental surgeries that lasted for hours. And the only way that you can see that he would even be able to survive that is to dissociate his brain. And that's what happened. I made the case, and I've actually written this in an unpublished manuscript that shows that Joseph Smith suffered from multiple personality disorder, what's we call now that. And so you see, that's not popular in Utah to humanize this demigod named Joseph Smith, but it's reality. And you see where he goes into basically getting tied up with this guy named Luman Walters. Luman Walters. This is documented by a Mormon historian at the time who wrote a book on this, actually, Early Mormonism and the Magic Worldview is the name of the book. And in the pages of this book, we find that Luman Walters became Joseph Smith's mentor and teacher when he was like 13 and 14, just coming into puberty, okay? So he's coming into puberty, and Luman Walters is teaching him all about how to use what's called entheogens, which are basically mind-altering chemicals. And one of the key things that Luman Walters was searching for in the hardwood birch forests of upstate New York was something called the fly agaric, or the Amanita muscaria mushroom. Oh my goodness. Early in the spring...
Is this Ivan or cubensis?
What's that?
Is that like a psilocybin mushroom? Or
yeah, well,
mushroom?
It flat out has different stages of psychoactiveness, okay? When it first starts to come forth out of the snowbanks in the early spring, it's actually called, it looks like a phallic. It looks like an erect penis, okay? It's absolutely stunning how close it looks to it. Okay, and in that stage, there's a whole series of psychoactive substances in that mushroom that Lumen Walters was trying to harness. So he had his protege, little young pubescent Joseph Smith, age 13, scouring the forests around his little farm there in Palmyra, New York, looking for these mushrooms. He was paying Joseph X cents per pound, 25 cents a little bag or whatever, to bring it to him. Well, Joseph Smith, I say, had a mushroom trip for that first vision, because you see, in modern,
maybe that's where they came from.
Yeah, modern day research has shown that particular mushroom in that stage, in volunteers that came in, they had lethal dosage amounts. They knew what was safe to take, and then they monitored them through electroencephalogram, brain and heart rhythms to see what was happening in the psychoactive stage. Every single one of the test subjects thought they were going to die. They had an adrenal rush. Their heart began to really pound. They started to hyperventilate. They thought they were going to die. And then because of the rush of adrenaline, the adrenaline chemical meshed with the psychoactive mushroom and caused, they all said, a bright, blinding light. Some even described a pillar of light coming down. And within that light, they saw beings and they communicated with them. I'm telling you, this makes...
That is scary.
Yeah, it's
totally scary. This kid could be out there not even eating them. It could have just been picking them up, and maybe he had an abrasion and it pierced his dermal layer, or maybe he's putting them in his bag. Then he eats his lunch, and his hands are all covered with mushroom spores. I could just imagine.
Yeah. So you
horrible.
see what I submit is happening. And the Amanita muscaria, as it grows, it forms these really large. They're red with white spots, and they go back into the whole Santa Claus tradition of the Northlands. Saint Nick would actually use these mushrooms for psychoactive purposes. It's all well known, and even the Roman Catholic Church had as an affinity to that in the color of the cardinals. There's actually, if you look at St. Peter's Basilica, there's all kinds of homage to the Amanita muscaria mushroom around St. Peter's Square. It's been used by false religionists for many, many centuries. But here's my point. On the 21st of September, which is coming up right now pretty quick, in upstate New York, especially through that region, when the first frosts start to hit, the Amanita muscaria turns from a bright red color to a golden looking sheen color. And it's actually called in the nomenclature, it's called the golden plate stage. Oh my goodness. Joseph Smith was out.
Golden plate? Oh my
plates.
Goodness.
Yeah, and the 21st of September, which is exactly when the story happened, for 4 years before he had a meeting with Moroni.
That's right around the equinox, isn't it?
Yes, it's called Mabron in the Wiccan Wheel of the Year, and that's exactly Moroni is the entity that manifests to witches and warlocks during that time of Mabron. I see the links and I'm saying, oh my goodness, this, because again, Michael Quinn, the Mormon Church historian at Brigham Young University, compiled much of this in a book called Early Mormonism and the Magic Worldview, and clearly Joseph Smith's family was deep into folk magic. and into witchcraft incantations. No doubt about it. And here Joseph Smith is this multiple personality disorder, he dissociates all the time into different altars is the correct term, and he hooks up with this potion maker, this potion peddler, who focuses on entheogenic substances to give people religious experiences. Hey, Luhmann Walters, by the way, was taught his craft of he was a student of Anton Mesmer's in Austria, but was absolutely banished from the country because there were allegations that he was hypnotizing or mesmerizing a bunch of attractive women and putting them under a spell for sexual favors. Oh yeah, that's Luhmann Walters' background history. Yeah,
wow.
It's
some. I hate to talk bad about other people's religions, but I mean, this one is they sort of wear kick me signs.
I don't think it's talking bad. I'm just saying here's historical. Look at this. It's not bad to have a historian named Michael Quinn publish, history on the church. It's being transparent. Okay. And then fast forward.
I like that they let brown people into heaven now. They didn't used to.
That's a good point. But it's in the Book of Mormon that came out of the golden plates, Joseph Smith wrote, right, that you either have a white and delightsome skin, which means you're righteous, or if you're non-righteous and you're dark and loathsome. So the American Indians, according to the Book of Mormon, were cursed with a dark skin, and of course the Mormons taught for years that people of African descent, oh my goodness, they were descendants of Cain and they were the original cursed race, never to go to heaven at all. I mean, yeah, the Mormon Church has changed that now. I mean, they've and the legislation forced them to do that was under Jimmy Carter, President Carter's Civil Rights Act, that said they would lose favorable tax status if they didn't follow the civil rights and give equal rights of membership in the priesthood to men of color. and the revelation from the prophet Spencer Woolley
The 70s
Kimball,
were such an equal rights battleground. You remember the Equal Rights Amendment?
Yeah.
You're old enough to remember that.
Oh, of course.
Didn't pass.
Lived right through it, yeah.
What a battleground. It was such an amazing time to be alive. We haven't had anything like that since. Now we have executive orders and we have congressional overstepping and things like that where people just squash down on the Constitution and they all just agree that they're going to do it. Like with the Patriot Act and things like that. But the 70s was such an amazing time to realize that here are the states fighting for rights, and it basically came down to that we already had enough laws giving people equal rights. With the 13th Amendment and the 19th Amendment, they already covered that sufficiently with suffrage and with the emancipation of the slaves. And I wonder, I was at the Abraham Lincoln Memorial here just right before I went into Congress. I went there, and I'm reading the path, and fully 1/8 of the population of America at the time of the Civil War were black slaves. Do we have more black people in America now, or less? Are we more than 1/8 or less than 1/8? I submit if we're more than 1/8, then we're doing something successful.
Yes, I'm not sure of the demographics. I think it's probably more than 1/8, or I don't know how much more, but yeah, I think it is more. But yeah, equal rights, and so Mormonism, was the most egregious one that they could, black members, and there were quite a few African American Mormons that were just not allowed to go to the temples. They couldn't enter and be, the after death rites that they do in the temple. So it was very, very discriminatory. It really was. And of course, they couldn't keep that going and keep their 501c3 nonprofit IRS status, you see. So they had to kowtow to it. So they had a revelation. That's not being harsh. It's being realistic. Okay, being real. So yeah, I'm segging into this because what happened is, here we have Senator Willard Mittens Romney, who was ex-president candidate Romney. Boy, I tell you, the Romney camp absolutely had enmity towards True Odds radio show, believe me, during those years. Because, man, I was constantly exposing Willard Mittens Romney's hypocrisy completely and totally. I mean, to this day, he got his money, big-time money from Bain Capital from a deal with big tobacco to bring tobacco factories into Russia. Fact. That's where he got his lion's share of his wealth. So today he's still working for big tobacco. He's comes out and was so happy that he finally supported President Trump in one thing. Oh, we got to stop this vaping. We got to have legislation to restrict this vaping. Why? Because you see, vaping is really cutting into the profits of big pharma. Oh.
I'm sure it is. I was turned off by Mr. Romney when I heard that he had accidentally left his dog tied up on top of his car when they took a trip.
Yeah. Like Chevy Chase's vacation. Yeah, golly. The man is an absolute phony. I mean, a fraud and a phony. What bugs me, I don't have a problem with people making money in big tobacco if they're honest and transparent about it. This guy is hooking tens of thousands of new Russians in a very lucrative market, young Russians, on this addictive tobacco product, which is laced with all other kinds of chemicals. Now, he knows this.
Tell me about it. I've been smoking since I was 11. I ended up with cancer, and they had to cut it all out. They cut me all off, and nobody likes that.
So that's the first hour already. We're out of time. I'll get back to this. Yeah.
Are you done with me, sir?
Well, yeah, if you want to just hang on to the second hour,
I'll hang on. Listen, I'm having a great time. You make me want to talk, and I don't want to talk over you.
No problem. We'll be right back after these messages. Don't go away. This is the story behind the story. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the second hour of tonight's story behind the story. Joining me tonight is Mr. James Watkins. Oh, golly, the embattled founder of C-SPAN. Oh, C-SPAN. Oh, my goodness.
Just put me right at the, I think that's
right. 8chan, ladies and gentlemen, not C-SPAN. I had to laugh at myself sometime. I'm trying to multitask, and I'm not a very good multitasker. I'm really not, James. Okay, so yeah.
Amazing person, but different than me.
I didn't want to go off on these tangents, but still, that's kind of what makes the show. We don't have anything scripted. We want to just follow where it goes, and the whole point I was making with Mitt Romney is simply this: when you post, and just recently I posted to the Salt Lake Tribune an editorial saying that Mr. Romney needs to be held to task for all the money he makes from big tobacco. I don't, the fact that he does this is one thing, but he stands up as a devout Mormon, a stake president, a leader in the Mormon Church. He shouldn't be making money from people being hooked on tobacco when he's so against tobacco and his religion. That's my point. And so, boy, the editorial was never published, never would be. Of course, there's levels of truth that they won't publish. You know what I'm talking about, James?
Why don't you read it now? Why don't you read it? Just paraphrase it.
Basically showing the whole history of Bain Capital and their contract with R.J. Reynolds, other big tobacco, to build the factory in Russia when the Soviet Union collapsed and Gorbachev said, okay, we need capital. Man, this is a huge story, and Willard Mittens Romney was the front man on that, and is still reaping great profits off of that. And that's the primary thing that Bain Capital did. And so you see that while he was doing this, he was a stake president of the Mormon Church in Boston, liberal Boston, right? And he's, as a stake president, you sit in judgment of people coming in if they smell like they've had cigarettes, or it's called the word of wisdom in Mormonism, okay? If you have smoked cigarettes, you are not worthy to enter the Mormons' temples. And
coffee, too.
Yeah, and coffee and alcohol and that. There's it's a code of health. And so they don't want people smelling like cigarettes going into the celestial room of the temples, you see. And so the
first time I saw decaffeinated Coca-Cola was in Utah.
Right. I mean, come on, it's such a double standard, and fine, Mr. Romney, if you're going to make money off of this, fine, but let's be honest with it. Let's. And this is why he's so anti-vaping. He has been, because it's bugging. It's really hurting the bottom line of big tobacco. Okay. And thus,
vaping has its own different problems, though.
Yeah,
pneumonia and you're putting liquid in your lungs, and you're putting yourself at risk of pneumonia. But it's still safer than all of the tars and formaldehyde and all of that's in cigarettes.
Well, the nicotine. I mean, I've posted many papers on the dangers of what nicotine actually is. It's a narcotic. It is a carcinogenic structure. It's very harmful, and so they're actually putting nicotine into vapors, even though they're flavored. They're you're actually getting more nicotine than in a cigarette. So because they want people to be hooked on it. You see, same thing. Addictive. It's an addictive drug, no doubt about it. So yeah, I mean,
they have two different ways of doing the vaping. One of them, they put the flavor in propylene glycol, and the other one, they put the vape in vegetable oil, which is probably cottonseed oil, but it would depend on the manufacturer. So putting these different chemicals into your lungs needs to be looked at.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's a separate issue. It's a separate issue from tobacco. And you're absolutely right. With the tobacco is really a tough sell, and they shouldn't be encouraging it to new people. Because when I was a kid, it was against the law for me to go buy cigarettes when I was 11. I did.
Yeah, and so here, here's this. So they're just making all kinds of billions of rubles now instead of dollars, and I mean that's just the reality. Look at the history. There's been people that have whistleblown on this, but it's very it's been kind of scrubbed from the internet lately and things like that. And propylene glycol is also better known as antifreeze. What happens if your pet dog licks up some sweet tasting antifreeze? That dog is going to die. It's a highly toxic poison.
Well, I think they stopped making antifreeze that way so that the dogs wouldn't die. They changed the flavor or the consistency or something.
Yeah, so they but it's the
glycol
same stuff.
Comes from glycerin, and glycerin is sweet.
Yep.
So that's the problem.
So put it into vapes and get it smoking into your lungs. By all means, suck away. I'm telling you, it's crazy what's happening with folks. But yeah, I wanted to kind of delve in, as I always do in this time of year. This is the 13th of it's Friday the 13th. Today is a good time to talk about this. But I sent this out on to a number of people. This was in my archives of September 11th. I listened to Fox News and all of it's just sickening. They're still towing the lie of what really happened in September 11th, ignoring the clips of whistleblowers that said, I had this guy on my radio show. This guy's name is Barry Jennings. I had him on my radio show about November of 2001. And this guy, Barry Jennings, is no longer with us. He died mysteriously in 2008, went into the hospital, never came out because he was still talking too much. Barry Jennings was his story is amazing because you see, he was an eyewitness to what really happened in Building 7 on that September 11th day. And you listen to his testimony, it's absolutely truthful, absolutely believable, but the mainstream media is scared to death of this story getting traction. Have you heard of this before, James?
Yeah, I've heard of it. And the other day, just to bring this up, on the 9th, I sat down in a breakfast in a small restaurant, and there was this guy. He was wearing a disabled veteran thing, and he was walking with a walker, and I gave him a hand with his coffee and sat down, and we talked for a while. And he explained, in Vietnam, he'd been actually in Cambodia with the long-range recon. And then when he came back to America, he got involved with demolitions. And he mentioned that they always put the explosives on the inside of the building to make the building fall down. If you put the explosives on the outside of the building doesn't fall down. And I didn't at the time. It's 2 days from September 11th, and he must have had that on his mind. I didn't, 2 and 2 didn't click. What's he talking about? I said, then I realized, oh my God, he was talking about that. And I didn't get his name. He's an old man, looked like Steven Tyler from Aerosmith, but he was really cool. I talked to him for a couple hours. Nice man. Well,
that's the thing. I interviewed a guy named William Bill Cooper in July of 2001. He was kind of a regular guest on my show. He was a very interesting gentleman. He wrote a book called Behold the Pale Horse. Okay, he used to work for Navy intelligence as a spook, and when he left Navy intelligence, he still kept. He had some sources that it was very interesting to talk to. Very controversial, and controversial is not a bad thing when you're doing talk radio. But Mr. Cooper explained that his sources were telling them there was going to be a false flag event concerning the World Trade Center. He was telling me this, that it was going to be blamed on Middle Eastern countries to precipitate war. He was telling me this in July of 2001. Okay, Mr. Cooper,
and do you realize that actual debt was erased from the planet when they blew those towers up?
Absolutely.
There were banks in those towers that had their backups in those towers, in different offices in those towers, and when they imploded, those banks were erased.
And not to mention the Pentagon, where the area that was just happened to be hit was the financial sector of the Pentagon, where Donald Rumsfeld had just barely said the day or two before that they were investigating trillions of dollars in misappropriations. Dov Zakheim was the controller. Dov Zakheim is a dual Israeli-American citizen, and much of this was being, the people in the inside were saying this was being illegally transferred to Israel through Dov Zakheim manipulating it. Isn't that just interesting? I mean, come on, it's just coincidence, no? Well,
it's so interesting. And when you go to Congress, do you know what they call you? They put you a label that says vendor.
Ah.
You're a vendor when you go to Congress. I had no idea. I think that's because of the lobbyists.
Well, vendors. Yeah, well, you're just not part of the good old boy club. But I got to tell you this, Jims. I had through William Cooper's connection, when he told me what was being planned, and then all about this Project for a New American Century, the PNAC think tank report that came out that said there had to be regime change in these countries, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, okay, but the American public wouldn't allow regime change and military action unless, quote, absent some new Pearl Harbor type of catalyzing event. This is in the report itself. So here's Cooper telling me, he says this new Pearl Harbor event will be an attack on the World Trade Center. It will be internally done, but made to look like an outward attack. Wow. I played devil's advocate with him, and as I said, oh man, who in our government would be so dastardly to sacrifice human life that way? And Cooper says, these people are miscreants. They don't care about human life. It's like swatting a fly to them. They think nothing of it. Well, I sure hope you're wrong.
I think about every year. I think about all of the brave people that did something there at that time, even though bad forces were at work that day, and the brave people did something. People like Todd Beamer, they crashed their airplane into the Pennsylvania farm instead of into where their next target would have been. They made their choice, and I think that they had angelic beings probably helping them, giving them opportunities. He got an opportunity to talk to his wife before they did that, and I always get upset around that time of the year, just realizing what those people had to do and the choices they had to make. They made the choice for the greater good, and it probably didn't make anyone happy that wanted the next thing destroyed in the next financial market or whatever that airplane was destined for.
Yes, and yeah. Do you remember the little documentary film called Loose Change, The Final Cut, and how that really was well put together in itself? So many things like Barry Jennings' interview that has even they didn't jump onto what Barry Jennings was saying about Building 7. That's the key to understanding this whole thing. Larry Silverstein, the Port Authority head, actually let it slip in an interview that he gave the order to pull Building 7, means to control demolition it. After the events of September 11th, I called Cooper up, William Bill Cooper, and I said, "Wow, it happened exactly. You were right on point." He says, "Now we gotta let the cat out of the bag to let people know that it, and try to stop this media blitz of brainwashing." He says that this was controlled demolition. I said, "Controlled demolition?" He says, "Yes, sir. The World Trade Centers were built to withstand a direct hit by a jet airliner, and it did just what it was designed to do. The fires were contained. Okay, you don't send all those firemen into harm's way if you have any idea at all that those are going to melt the pillars and collapse into one. I mean, you just don't do that. They knew that it was structurally sound. They wouldn't send the firemen in there. to fight the fires that were burning. Okay, so here's Cooper saying, I have in my repertoire. This is a gentleman who's Russian and Finland, but he lives in Finland. But he's the number one demolition expert in the world, and he was contacted by the Port Authority in 18 months earlier to ask how he could demolish Building 7 and the Twin Towers. And I said, why would they want to demolish them? He says, because they're so full of asbestos, mesothelioma. It's an unhealthy building. They had to demolish it and rebuild it. Oh, are you kidding me?
That's an interesting reason.
Yeah,
but
and so
I don't think if they were going to demolish it that way, they would have evacuated it first.
No, but here's the issue. This gentleman that Cooper put me in touch with he went actually and got the schematic of what needed to happen to demolish it into its fingerprint. You got to remember the steel pillars that were in those two twin towers were anchored to the bedrock. Okay, they had to be demolished, so they would do in free fall. You have to have a very, very powerful explosive charge in the basement in order to make it happen. And this expert said, no way you can do this. There's not enough thermite to do this. You have to have the equivalent of a bunker buster mini nuke do it. And so he had the drawing and the schematic, and of course, how are you going to do it legally? So why not do it and have it be a terrorist act and get insurance money, which Silverstein got? Oh my goodness, yes, I see it. There's a profit motive involved with it for sure. Well, when I talked to this contact of Cooper's. He agreed to go on live on a radio. I was doing live from a radio station at the time, and so we arranged to call. And he would only be on for 10 minutes, and he would go off and go to a different phone. He didn't want to have his calls traced. He says, "I tell you this," and he would only talk except through a voice scrambler. We're into the live broadcast where he's exposing this, and he has, of course, a heavy accent. He speaks good English, but a heavy Finnish Russian accent, and he's talking through a voice scrambler. He sounds like Darth Vader, but you can understand what he's saying. It's amazing. I mean, it's radio gold, as Alex Studer would have said. Okay, and guess what happened to the show? We not only got knocked off the air, the whole station went dark. The FCC pulled it. Okay. Wow, talk about censorship.
It's amazing. And that's something that I don't know if you know this Ted Cruz guy from Texas.
Yeah.
He's a Senator Ted Cruz. I should give him his. He's pointing this out, that the internet was supposed to solve this problem of the people being one-sided and pulling things and stuff, because the FCC does that. They have standards. You have to follow them, and they're substantially different, as you and I talk on the radio right now, than if we were talking on the internet. We could be using other words, for example, and I don't actually speak that way unless I really mean it. If you get a 4-letter word out of me, you deserve it. I do use them, but only when it's appropriate.
Surely.
But this Ted Cruz is pointing out, and I'm not picking his side or anything. I don't even know if he's a Republican or a Democrat. I wasn't familiar with the man until I was listening to him on what he was talking about Google having a 90% monopoly on the internet, on choosing what people get to see and read and all that, which makes everyone only get to see what Google thinks you should see. Whereas the internet was supposed to not be a liberal internet or a conservative internet. It was supposed to be the internet with both being able to go both ways, not specifically one way. And I'm sorry, I got off on a tangent there. Are we still talking about the same subject?
Yeah. Whatever you want to go, wherever you want to go, James. It's there's no censorship on the story.
No, I was just going on and on and on about this, and I just realized that at the same time they've got me here pushing me to force Americans to self-censor and basically use prior restraint. When we could use prior restraint, we can put algorithms on that shadow ban people and stop people from seeing what you say. I run a technology company that's been in business for 22 years now. Some of these other technologies companies that took the big money and had to follow the path of that big money, wherever it takes you, don't have a choice. They have to put those algorithms on to satisfy the people that gave them money. When you take that big money, and I know you didn't take it, you guys are just barely scraping by, and please send money to Revolution Radio. They need it. It's expensive to do it. And they didn't take the big money. That's why you can talk about whatever you want. As long as you don't violate FCC rules. And there are very few, actually. That you can't incite things, and you can't use the naughty word list from George Carlin. Things like that. But
absolutely, yeah. I was broadcasting the story behind the story, James, in the 90s. Actually, it started in the mid 90s, and we really hit our groove during the Clinton administration, of course, and exposing the Hillary-itis and all the poisoned people that die around Hillary and Bill. And we had quite a following. We were broadcasting live on Thursday. It was once a week on Thursdays from this radio station in Cedar City, Utah. And we branched out.
I've been to Cedar City.
Yeah, that's where I started. And we had my partner in this was the current editor of the Daily Spectrum daily newspaper, who was continually frustrated by his newspaper censorship of topics, not the least of which is satanic ritual abuse covertly going on in Utah and Western states. There's something that they just didn't want to put. It's like Pizzagate, right? We're not having pedophilia rings going out here, hiding a code names as pizza. No. See, this is the type of censorship that he was frustrated with. So we did the radio show to expose these things. And then once we started doing that, it began whatever else, whether it's UFOs, whether it's the anomalies of the Skinwalker Ranch up in Utah, in Duchesne County. We covered that in a big way. And it was the most incredibly real, bizarre story that I've ever heard, and I don't think I'll ever hear anything more bizarre. And yet,
people don't remember, but I remember what was going on back then. There was so much, and you were right there in the thick of it.
And so here we get George W. coming into play, and here I actually had interactions with John F. Kennedy Jr., right? Concerning what this is. I don't want to go off on this tangent, but I tell you what, the story behind the story was being, it was tape delayed, and then we rebroadcast it after hours, like in the dead time between 1 p.m. or 1 a.m. and 3 a.m. It's a 2-hour show, 1 to 3 a.m. And you know what? We had fan mail pouring in from places like Hawaii, because during the early morning hours, the signal was very strong. You could pick it up really clear in San Francisco, L.A., all the way down, and we had people starting to really kind of had a cult following. And
were you 50,000 watts?
Yeah. I mean, it was broadcasting.
So you were broadcasting off the ionosphere at night. People would pick it up from everywhere. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
I love AM radio.
Yeah, the AM signal was so powerful. We were getting all kinds surprising fan mail from Honolulu, Hawaii. Okay, it was kind of cool. But we got nominated for the Peabody Award in our market. The Peabody is the equivalent of the Oscars for the movies in the radio world. We turned some heads. But let me tell you,
well done.
And it was just fun doing it. I wasn't doing it for the accolades. I was wanting to tell the story. I wanted a soapbox and a microphone to tell people what I thought was really cool stories that the media were just like, no, thank you, censorship. So here's what happened. When Warren and I got nominated for the Peabody, we, of course, were nominated, but we didn't win. But we went to their little awards deal, and it was kind of cool. But they wanted to know who's your agent. So I had a literary agent. I'd written books. Her name was B.K. Nelson. B.K. was my agent. She's out of Palm Springs, California. And so I said when the word came, and B.K. said, well, listen, I can syndicate you. She syndicated, remember Dr. Ruth Westheimer, the sex doctor on the radio? Dr. Ruth Westheimer,
I remember Dr. Ruth.
Well,
of course.
She was syndicated by my agent, BK. So she said, I can put you in the same stations as Dr. Ruth, maybe even more, because you're Peabody Award. You're Peabody nominee. Okay, you're wildly popular. So she had arranged a contract, and it was lucrative. I mean, my signing bonus was $750,000, of which she got 15%. Well, we went. So she was. Here's the contract. Okay. So the syndication was a company called Clear Channel, and as I read the contract, I couldn't sign it. You know why? Because they would edit content. They had final say over content. I scratched that out. I said, nope. I have final say of content. I say what goes on the radio. Not you, not anybody censoring me. I won't be censored. Well, they came back and said, well, this is standard boilerplate. We can cut that out if it's a deal breaker, but we'll make certain that there are 3 areas that we will not allow any content. And that's our deal breaker. And you know what the number one thing was? Do not say anything derogatory against Israel and or the Holocaust. Those are the areas. And I was a Mormon at the time. Okay, I was an active Mormon, and I thought Israel was all wonderful.
There were 2 Jewish congressmen this week discussing this topic. And one of them was asked to apologize to the one Muslim lady that's the congressman now. She wears the hat when she's in Congress. Mm-hmm. I forget the name of that. A burqa, I think. Yeah. And of course he did apologize, and he came out and he said different things, but he said his opinion equally, which is okay. He's got an opinion, but neither one of these 2 people's opinions is as eloquent as they were legally valid. And these are congressmen. They had this is not, we have to nullify the Constitution and start over if we're going to build an anti-defamation country. You have a right to libel someone. You have to deal with the results of your action, but you have a right to do that. And you have a right to deny dare I say, Holocaust? Although I don't think it was. I think that what happened in World War II was horrible for so many people, Jews and Germans and Americans and Englishmen and every French. It was horrible for the whole world. That's why they call it a world war. You know.
Indeed.
And to make the decisions they had to make on either side and firebomb this city and Dresden burns and how many atrocities were done by everybody?
Well, James, yeah, and that brings us to the crux. I want to get into this second hour with you, and thank you for segueing into that, because you see, when I saw that contract, and then I was immediately saying, why is Israel protected this way? That's caused me to question more than anything that they hadn't.
Well, it's where the money comes from.
Yeah. Well, so I began to dig into the reasons why that this, and I found that the media as a whole and Clear Channel is really controlled by Jewish interests, etc. And so then I uncovered that the reason why so much of the media is censored, why my friend Warren was so frustrated, is because it's owned by the media moguls are Jewish controlled. And so I began to say, oh my goodness, this is a problem. No wonder we have censorship. No wonder we have this and that going on. And so I began to voice my opinion that censorship in the press it's unconstitutional. It goes against our First Amendment rights. And I've been fighting that since the 90s.
Dissolve the union and restart over if they want to get rid of that.
And you know what?
That's not going to happen.
You know what got me in the most hot water besides the truth about September 11th, James, is when I started to bring guests on to talk about the Lithuanian genocide of 1938 and the genocide of 66 million white Christians under the Russian communist Bolshevik heel. Now, when you start going into that area, the Lithuanian story in 1938 is an incredible.
You're going to get accused of hate speech if you're not careful.
Yeah,
you know that?
Yeah, exactly.
You're doing what Bob Dylan did. Bob Dylan, you know, the guy, he got the Nobel Peace Prize. That he got convicted of hate speech in France for talking about the similar event that happened in Croatia.
Yes,
because you're not supposed to talk about it.
Tell that to the people that have relatives that perish that way, and I oh my goodness, so the Great Replacement theory is an outgrowth of that, because I'm telling you, there is a war going on for liquidation of white Christians. It's just a matter of fact.
I understand. And then there's this other group called BDS. Americans have nothing to do with BDS. They could care less. They were bringing BDS up in Congress. BDS is like a Palestinian movement. Now, in the early 90s, I lived with Palestinians. They're decent people, pretty much. The ones I lived with I learned to eat with my hand and eat goat meat and yogurt rice and all these neat things. It was really nice.
Right.
Good people. But whether the political movement called BDS is valid or not is not an American business. What is that going on in the Senate for, or the Congress, or it was in the House? It wasn't in the Senate. Why are they bringing that up? It has nothing to do with anything.
I'll tell you why.
We should talk about prices in China.
Yeah, James, listen. This is one of the interviews I did with, and this was brokered by Alex Studer. Dr. Cynthia McKinney was on as a guest. She's the ex-Georgia representative to the House, first black Democrat woman to be elected in Georgia to go represent the great state of Georgia in the House of Representatives. She was amazing on the show because she said the reason why she went into trouble, she would not sign the required loyalty oath to protect Israel. As a congressperson, she says, I don't represent Israel. I have nothing against Israel, but they're not my constituency. I represent the people in my district in Georgia.
In World War II.
What's that?
I think they got rid of loyalty oaths in World War II, and she's absolutely correct. She has no need or anything to sign that.
Well, they told her, if you don't sign it, you will not get a second term. And she says, what does that mean? I'm not appointed by you. I'm elected by my constituency. Well, she never did get another term because of what the manipulations went behind the scenes to stop her. She was a great interview, an absolutely great interview.
Gerrymandered her out of there, probably.
So she was laughing about the results of Hillary, and I said, "What would you have a message to Hillary because of the political machinations that went on behind the scenes, even to vote black box tampering?" Okay, she knew the exit polling had her winning, but it was again the electronic black box manipulation of the whole process. I says, "Wow, what would you say to your fellow Democrat Hillary?" And she says, she laughs. She says, "How does it feel, Miss Witch? You know, how does it feel?" Because it was her own, Democrats that didn't rally behind her because she wouldn't sign that darn loyalty oath to Israel. What a story! I mean, come on.
Well, we don't have any obligation to them. And you know what? There's nothing that I would be happier about if the Palestinians and the Israelis got along. That would make me really happy.
Well, sure,
I've got friends that have been in Israel and they worked on the kibbutz for the summer and all that, and they come back and they talk to you about it. And it's sort of like when you're in the Mormons and you go overseas for a year and you go around and talk to people. Someone gave me a Mormon Bible the other day. Nice kid. Day before all of this stuff hit the fan, he gave me that, and he said, "You really need this." And you know what? I think he was sincere.
Yeah, sure.
Maybe I don't need to read a bunch of extra Bible books, but it's not my thing. But I'm very thankful he gave me that and talked to me. Not because it was a religious thing. It's like, I was really stressing out, and it was nice that this kid came and talked to me.
Yeah, the Mormon missionaries. I used to be one. I served 2 years in upstate New York. I mean, that's my family. There's no more sincere people in the world, and they're good people. The Mormon, they just don't understand the story behind the story of Jesus.
I agree. They're really good people. And it's not my religion, but the people I've met are really nice.
Yeah, like Paul the Apostle said, we don't war against flesh and blood. Our battle is not against flesh and blood; it's against principalities and powers and evil in the highest places, which manipulates this. And this is what I try to focus on. It's not the people that's the problem. It really isn't. So I say I fight the war on error, not the war on terror. We just got to just set the record straight and go with truth. Truth is objectively observable and factual reality. It's not opinion.
Right on.
So anyway, it's quite a history we've had in radio since the 90s, and I've seen a lot of things come through and a lot of unpopular things. But we've been taken off the air for what happened. We weren't able to broadcast live anymore after I was interviewing that demolitions expert, and so we took a sabbatical for a couple of years until we were able to get on internet radio, and that's where we found our niche after that. And so the second time I've been asked to step aside on the air is this debacle with the El Paso shooter and your situation where they attacked your 8chan. So I mean,
Well, we were attacked by those same money people that you were almost took the $750,000 from. You know what? Right now, $750,000 would really help me. I'll tell you what. I am just bleeding.
Well,
I am bleeding greenback dollars right now. But and HM wasn't making money. I mean, I'm bleeding to setting up a new thing because I'm irritated and angry and upset because all this happened. So I'm going to make it unstoppable.
Well, my agent was very upset with me when I said if something is wrong with Israel, I'll expose it. Okay, I don't see anything wrong with it. I think they're great. But she says, then sign it. You don't have to worry about it. I says, because she lost a lot of money off of that, and maybe I was stupid not to sign it. But you know what? I've never allowed censorship. End of story. So I mean, it's been one of my hot buttons, and I don't do radio for the money. You know, I don't. Heavens, it's not something we get paid. Dominic and Mr. Rowe do their time here with the show making it happen. Never been paid, at least if they are, I don't know about it. But it's just, okay, golly, what do you do with it? See, the whole idea is this, folks. Whenever somebody attacks free speech, they are attacking you. Don't ignore it. Don't turn away and click your tongue and say, well, it's not my ox that's being gored.
Or if they come after you next.
Exactly.
You know that? You're going to be next. It's unfortunate, but it's true. And you know what? They tried to get 12 amendments in the Bill of Rights, and they ratified 10 of them. And the 2 they didn't were for like benefits for the Congress people, and then that didn't go through. Thank goodness. But all of the other amendments can be amended and changed and all of that, but not those 10, those first 10. Can't be. If you want to get rid of those, you have to dissolve the country, and then we start over. And we've done that before because we used to be a looser confederation of states, and then they came up with the Constitution after that. But we can't do that. We would sooner be able to get rid of the 13th Amendment and bring back slavery. It's possible. Improbable, of course, but completely possible. Just like they made alcohol selling illegal and they had prohibition. This was a constitutional amendment that was both added and removed. We could decide those uppity women are voting too much, and we could all decide to get rid of the 19th Amendment and not have women's suffrage anymore, and get those women get them out of the House of Representatives. They don't belong there.
Yep. Yeah,
do you hear how that sounds? But those are completely possible things that could happen in the United States of America without ending our government. But what they are talking about now in censoring and ending the First Amendment, we have to end our country first and start over.
Yes.
And this has been tried before. We had a civil war, and our union stood and we're together now. And I'm certain that that's not going to happen. But we have to stand up for ourselves, and that's why I'm bleeding right now, because I'm not going to put up with this. I'm not going to put up with it. It's not government doing it, but it's government that allowed these people to get monopolies over the internet. You know, they could take a little less lobby money and spend a little more time supporting this Cruz guy in Texas. he's something else. I think he has a real point where he's talking about we have to make the internet free again, where it's not one-sided. It's become a one-sided algorithmic. Let me show you advertisements and what political speech we want you to read.
And let's take it down the rabbit hole a little further, James, if we can. Look what Google is doing in their R&D.
I could go deep.
With Mr. Raymond Kurzweil, right, and the Day of Singularity coming up, where artificial intelligence that's becoming more and more, overbearing and overarching. The Day of Singularity, they say, could happen as early as 2023. Now, what happens at that point, Google, when Google's basically controlling everything by AI, and they want that to happen? As Ted Cruz talked about the AI proliferation and the checks and balances on.
I'm not certain if he has. I only saw the one thing where he's talking about they're controlling it and they forced it to be a one-sided thing, and if they can keep that until 2020, then we won't have a fair election this time. It won't even be close to fair. We have to be live, and you have to have your radio show on, and you have to, and all of this, countless other. There's a lot of people out there, and they all run little shows, and they all bring grassroots effort together to get an alternate minority opinion online. But if Google is allowed, if the Alphabet company is allowed, we're all going to end up like China did when the United Kingdom got them all addicted to opium. The company that has 90% market share on the internet for what you get to see also owns 2 pharmaceutical companies.
You know what? I was speaking yesterday in depth with a gentleman who actually works at a very high level here at Hill Air Force Base in Utah. Oh, what a great individual! I mean, he's shared with me demographics. The problem that personnel are having in places like Hill Air Force Base is not unique. They're having a real problem with getting qualified help in, because the competition is such that Silicon Valley and the tech companies here in Utah are just sucking away the really good qualified people that the Army and Air Force and need. So it's being addressed in the Pentagon at the highest levels. But the demographics he shared with me yesterday was startling. He said, "Do you realize that today in America, only 20% of graduating college diplomas are given to people that are American? 80% is foreign." I said, "What? Really?" He says, "Yeah, here's the demographics from that's really shocking. Like 22% of graduates are American. The rest are from foreign countries." I can't believe that. I says, "Wow, I find that so hard to believe, but it's true."
Americans are catching on to the student loan trap. The student loan trap goes back to the congressman from your fine state that changed the bankruptcy laws. He pushed for it so that the Visa and MasterCard and student loans would no longer be able to be included in bankruptcy.
Yeah,
that's a Utah Senator, Mr. Hatch, I believe. But
yep.
Was he a congressman?
Senator. I call him. He pushed
that through. Yeah, and so the Americans are catching on that they can self-educate, they can pick and choose, they can take courses they need, and they can do like the Hank Williams Jr. and A Country Boy Can Survive. You know, that's how they're starting to think. And the foreigners are coming here. They have no freedom in their countries. they come here and they do get educated. They bring some of that American freedom back to their countries. And eventually things get changed. But unfortunately, they bring some of the socialist and communist backgrounds from their countries to our universities as well.
Yes, and no. Let me tell you one of the coolest interviews, I think, besides Cynthia McKinney. I was referred to this gal. She was like, this is her third doctorate degree. She's a national from Libya, Libyan national, and she was there at the University of Utah, the U of the U, and she was doing some kind of agricultural doctorate that she was working with there at the U. Wow, she was what an interview she gave, because she was shocked that the vast majority of Utahns and Americans were had been programmed to believe Muammar Gaddafi was this mad dog dictator. And I talked to her before the radio interview, and she was saying, oh, no, he's not a dictator. We have a very, very powerful form of representative government. We have the true.
What happened? I know what happened there. They tried to break their petrodollar away and make an African version of it, and that's going to get you killed every time.
Well, that's what she exactly said. She said, "Listen, we have the highest standard of living in all the Middle East. We are what's called the Switzerland of the Middle East, because and she went on and on, and she's so articulate and so educated, and so she's enthusiastic and mad about the portrayal of Gaddafi, the colonel. She says we love him, therefore what he's done with our country. There is no student loans. Education is free. Nothing is really free, she says, but where the difference is, Gaddafi has taken the assets of Libya, the oil reserves, and instead of giving it to a big company or a group of companies, a cartel, he kicked him out of the country and then put the money, because he was primarily on a contract to Russia, and so the petrodollars went in to gold and precious metals into the point, and it was the people's, these citizens were owners of that resource. And so there's no mortgage. She explained, you know what a mortgage means? And she says, comes from mortician or mortal. It means death, that you will die. It's death. It's
money till you're dead.
It's death grip. Yeah, it's a death grip on you. And Gaddafi came out against that. He says, there is no death grip on the people of Libya. We have no mortgages. We will provide the basic things that citizens have a right to, is education and transportation and health care and a house, a roof over their head. They don't have to pay for. And that's because we share the wealth.
Similar.
I mean, imagine that.
The Emirates are similar.
So I asked her, I said, isn't that socialism? And she says, no. We are equal participants in the country's wealth. That's the difference between you and I understand here in America. And we talked about the Bakken oil fields in North Dakota. She just laughed. She says, where does that – this is not Standard Oil's oil. It's the people of America's oil. There's more oil there than all of Libya combined. But you see, we're so ignorant of the realities of this. We should be demanding, we the people should demand, this is not being the
American people are letting themselves be farmed. And if you want to be farmed, if you want to be the agricultural product that is bringing in dollars for some big people, let yourself be a farm. They're farming you for drug money. They're farming you for student loan money.
And it's all about the money, isn't it? We're out of time, James. I mean, this has been a great interview. I apologize for being more of a kind of a monologue here, but it's been a good dialogue.
I'm enjoying listening to you. Super. I hope I get to come back and talk to you again.
You're always welcome. You got a free pass anytime you would like to come on the show. Oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, we've talked a lot of subjects, but it's all about this. It's all about, listen, you have basic inalienable rights of freedom. Okay, you do. And you know what's going to take that away from you if you're educated.
To life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You may not get that happiness, but you have practically a moral obligation to pursue it. Try to get happy.
Amen. As Phil Robertson would say, my friend Phil Robertson, be happy, happy, happy. Well, I wanted to have Phil on the show. We may get Phil on the show here soon, too. Oh, my goodness, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening tonight. The story behind the story. Mr. James Watkins, thank you. God bless you, sir. Keep flying the flag, my friend. Good night. We'll see you all next week. Have a great weekend.